Hello, this is Mike Manrod. I work for both Grand Canyon Education and Grand Canyon University as the CISO and also as adjunct faculty. And I also work as a volunteer for the Arizona Cyber Threat Response Alliance and the North American Cyber Range Association. Of course, the routine disclaimer, what I'm about to share here are my own ideas only and are not a reflection of any of these organizations. So again, Mike Manrod, and today I'm going to be talking about some of the AI challenges and opportunities that come with ChatGPT from a pragmatic perspective, how we should think of it if we're CISOs, security leaders, security engineers, or technicians in regular organizations going about the challenge of trying to figure out, hey, how do we deal with this? So I'm going to go through all of this pretty quickly, and then we've got some fun live demos near the end. At least I think they're fun. They're basic, but they're fun. So like this llama, I just wish I could make a face like that. But a lot of AI has been evolving for a long time. We've seen within the cyber community that the ChatGPT is obviously OpenAI has been developing for a long time, and we've had machine learning based models within the cyber realm for a long time. I mean, the next gen antivirus wave started at least a decade ago. Going up a slide or two, also, I'm presenting this particular video solo, but everything I share here has been joint research with Christian Talon, and then is also based on countless conversations with many people, too many to name. Of course, if you want to find me online, Crude Solutions, or I'm easy to find on LinkedIn too. So we're going to talk about just key categories of risk, very, very basic, some basic safety tips. We're going to look at security considerations in general. And like I said, we've got some fun live demos. Again, not intended to be complex or exhaustive, just kind of thought-provoking. So risks to consider for AI at work. So I think it's useful to divide things into a few categories of risks at a high level. The first category of risks in my mind relate to risks associated with users and business processes. And we'll go into that a lot more, but now we have these new capabilities. With great power comes great responsibility. Or growing up in a family of electrical contracting, we would say with great power comes great electricity. Sorry, that won't be my only dad joke in this walkthrough. But there's business risk associated with empowerment of new capabilities to users, and sometimes things can go wrong, and we're going to look at that. Second category is AI helping enable attackers and adversaries. So it gives our adversaries new capabilities. It makes us more productive as workers and defenders, possibly, but it could make our adversaries more productive. And we have some really fun, lighthearted demos on that exactly. Opportunity cost of failing to adapt to new capabilities afforded. I think one of the things we fail to see is if there's organization A and organization B that start an AI revolution as equals, and one of them takes the stance of, we're just going to block everything. We're going to try to shut this out and keep this away. We're not going to take any risks. Say they succeed and they just insulate themselves from this whole thing. Organization B, an exact competitor, tries to go about AI and ChatGPT and LLMs intelligently, carefully, and but is willing to take some risks, does engage in some activities that help them to learn and grow, and maybe they even get a few black eyes along the way. It's not hard to imagine how organization A will avoid some short-term risk, but long-term, they may face obsolescence. Organization B, they may take a few blunders, they may get a black eye here or there, but long-term, they're going to be much better off and much more future-proof. Now, of course, there's a lot to that discussion, and it varies organization by organization. But as security people, we tend to look at it as, hey, risk bad, avoid risk. And that's really very, very valid. But we need to remember the bigger picture of failing to adapt to new technologies is a risk in and of itself. And sometimes there's a big price to pay with that risk. Placing too much trust in the results is another problem. And I mean, some of the AI faculty I've been fortunate to get to interact with talk about things like, hey, human laziness and thinking and working and doing things. Obviously, there's a lot of risks there. Now, of course, there's socioeconomic, geopolitical, cultural, human behavioral risks. There's tons of countless risks that we're not even going to talk about here because they're either longer term, out of scope for what we need to think about in the very tactical as IT leaders and experts within, regular organizations trying to do our jobs. And then two, they're often things that are just, out of scope, out of the mind of what we can impact as our typical IT leader in a typical organization. So moving into that first category of risk, the risk involving, users and sensitive data, one of the biggest things, we open up this capability, a whole lot of GPTs and LLMs are going to use their models, they're going to train their future models with uploads. Now, each service has different terms of service. For ChatGPT, for example, you might have different terms of service, being a user on the website versus an API, or often you can have an enterprise agreement that protects your data and that provides different terms of service. Just be aware what you're providing, and if it is a source that does not assure you that it won't use that data that in a way you don't want, be very careful what you upload. Now, there's obvious things like social security numbers, typical PII, right, regulated data. But less intuitively, a lot of developers are taking advantage of ChatGPT and other large language models to upload things like source code. Hey, what did I do wrong? Heck, I've enjoyed the benefits of using LLMs to debug, but it's easy to either take proprietary source code that you don't want to share, or maybe there's source code that's legacy and has some hard-coded secrets or things that maybe shouldn't be there, but you certainly don't want to open them up to the world. So there's a lot to think through. Lastly, ChatGPT and similar resources are very, very ripe for malicious, Trojanized applications. And indeed, both the Apple Store and the Google Store have been just rampant with malicious applications. What makes it so easy? Well, there's great APIs to multiple LLMs like ChatGPT and others that will allow you to interact with the backend model, provide your own front end, and a new user to the app will be like, wow, this app's brilliant. It gave me, gosh, this is the best AI I've ever seen. There's no way this app could be malware. It's got to be something good that I can trust. Except the problem is it's not something good that you can trust. Not at all. What can often happen is somebody could build a relatively legit, relatively shady front-end app that works properly. The results will be brilliant because the results are using a trusted backend. The first version of the software may not be weaponized so that it succeeds in making it into the appropriate app stores. But then with an update, with a revision, all of a sudden backdoors, Trojan functionality, you end up with malware, and a benevolent, benign user may be none the wiser because, hey, it's behaving well. It's a great app. So in particular, the combination of the fact that people are searching for this and looking for this, lookalike apps are a big deal, weaponized apps are a big deal. Obviously, organizationally, hopefully you have security teams that can analyze and approve these one by one, have an approved software list, or use enterprise software deployment tools, MDMs, that kind of thing, to determine which ones go out, which ones don't. If you're an individual home user looking at this, you can even, if you don't know how to get deep into the malware analysis, analyzing files and reputation and publishers, just number of downloads, what else that publisher published. Shady looks shady pretty quickly at a first glance on a lot of these. Yes, there will be some that look pretty reputable at first glance where you really have to dive in and look at it, but a whole lot of them are obvious. So again, there's a lot of risk right there in the user space as users interact with these applications. And then, of course, got to put in our Hitchhiker's Guide reference there. Marvin would find it really disparaging that we consider any of this or ourselves intelligence, but we got to work with what we got. So safety tips for AI at work, mostly use the approved safe mainstream products, or if you like to, if you live on the technological edge, like a lot of us do it in an isolated sandbox VM, cloud VM, containerized environment, somewhere where you've thought through all the layers. A good guideline is, if you don't know if it's malware, analyze it in the places where you would do dynamic analysis on malware, and don't upload sensitive data, obviously. If you really need to use sensitive data for AI, again, being left behind is a risk. If there's data you want to upload that you don't want to train somebody's model, again, go through terms of service, set up enterprise agreements with trusted vendors, or look at local LLMs. There's plenty of repositories. Again, some of these repositories of local LLM models could have some poison stuff there. I think there's already been examples of that. Again, use common sense, do your homework, but there's some good options there. Make sure the data you upload today is not training the model that will be used tomorrow, if that data could be sensitive, and also make sure that the app itself is not malicious, or that it's not a front end to a legit service that's a malicious front end. Some safe and unsafe prompts. Obviously, I'm hitting a variety of audiences. We started with the assumption that you know what ChatGPT and LLMs are and a little bit about how they work. But again, I tried to make this funny, and feel free to steal these slides and these ideas for your own awareness trainings. But examples of acceptable ChatGPT prompts in a non-enterprise subscription might be like, hey, what are the top 10 traits of successful tech support people? Help us develop our career. Write me a funny poem about how tea is better than coffee. Yes, all my friends that are a part of that endless debate are probably pinging me and lighting me up right now for that remark. But yes, here I am drinking tea out of my black hat mug. To be fair, this black hat mug used to be full of coffee, but I've mostly given it up. Show me images of dogs playing poker wearing purple shirts with Dali. I love sitting up with the kids and giving each of my kids a chance to come up with a cool prompt and generate images and text them everybody their favorite images. It's fun. Tell me how to make the perfect margarita. Now that's one we should save for next week when we all get out to Black Hat. Figure out who's got the room with the kitchenette in it, and we're off into the races there. Right, so there's all sorts of things, and there's obviously infinite other things that are perfectly fine for a safe, non-malware, but not completely secure LLM like the free version of ChatGPT. But you want a secure LLM, whether that's a secure service or something local, if you want it to correct samples of code that are unredacted. Maybe there's hard-coded secrets and you're cleaning up legacy code. Maybe you just don't know what's in there and you want to work fast. There's all sorts of scenarios and options. Another one is a salesperson is like, hey, predict which customers are going to drop in the next 2 weeks based upon this huge set of data. Which customer we're not going to retain, who's not going to eat at this restaurant again. Again, these are all great things to know, things that the AI models absolutely can and should help us with, but be aware the terms of service and reliability, plus the normal third-party risk basics of where you put it. And then obviously my favorite is, predict the revenue for end of year based upon all the financial data I just pasted. Well, there could be GLBA, it could be it could be fall under SOX or other regulatory things. Maybe if you get that data the wrong way, I don't know if that would be insider trading or not. I'd ask an attorney, but certainly, predictions that put you ahead based upon internal data in an open model isn't a good idea. And if you do it in a localized model that is safe and secure, if you're predicting things, make sure the appropriate financial, regulatory, and legal experts in your company have approved you doing that. And just like science experiments require an ethical review, these things generally it's good to get a legal compliance review if they trudge into murky territory. All right, now to the fun part, and Christian and I have an article we're working on getting published, on this topic with, named after this. I tricked AI and I liked it. Weaponizing prompts, weaponizing these tools. Like this comes down to the fun category of the risk of how they help the adversary. If we want to understand this, we have to play with it. We have to think like the adversary. The normal red teaming, purple teaming mindset has to come into play here. Of course, don't listen to me. I'm just a manager, so I'm going to plant some seeds here. Everybody can probably do more better, but we're going to tinker with some things, and hopefully some of you who see this video will obviously go tinker with better, cooler things and take it farther. But this is just fun stuff I was able to whip up between meetings here and there. So the range of possibilities of how an attacker can weaponize, say ChatGPT or LLMs, jailbreaks are one example, obviously. Prompt engineering, and I don't have it on the slide, but obviously, Worm GPT has been big in the news. You can set up a local LLM and train it with whatever malicious things you want to do. You can build your own. There's repositories, galore where you can download them. There's just a ton of resources that can be used, and most of them can be used for good or bad. It's like any hacking tool. We can use them as security researchers, as defenders to understand our own environments, but they can be used by adversaries too. So like all hacking tools, all new methodologies, approaches, ideas, we want to be testing them on the defensive side and aware of them so that we're not blind to things that are happening out on the threat landscape. I'm going to back up for just a second here. One other key thing, a couple key notes here, and I don't have slides for this, but one point that Christian makes really well a lot is we want to be careful not to anthropomorphize, these versions of AI. Like ChatGPT isn't alive. It's a statistical algorithm, calculating and predicting, tokens of chunks of text to put together the best match for our prompt. And then ultimately, after a series of transformations, trimming our prompt and returning it to us. I probably butchered that horribly bad, and absolutely, anybody who wants to critique and improve upon my explanation, please do so in the comments, and I'm sure there will be better resources that people link to. But basically, the point I'm getting at is not a good explanation so much as it's an algorithm. So we have to be careful not to read into it what it's not, which goes back to our over-reliance risk. There are going to be people who go crazy tricking them into thinking that the ChatGPT or LLM they're interacting with is a person and an entity, and it's not. It's an algorithm. So we need to remain aware of that. The other thing we need to absolutely remain aware of as we think through this is the fact that the resources that are out there that are being used maliciously don't change the fundamental nature of attack and defense. Nothing changes about the threat landscape with Worm GPT or any of these LLMs. All they're doing is empowering and enabling a greater level of capability within things that already work today. It's just an enablement. And if anything, for the more advanced adversaries, it'll just boost their productivity just like it boosts ours. For the lowest end of the adversary food chain, it might level some of them up a level by removing technical barriers to entry. So that should be alarming to all of us, simply because we might have to deal with more adversaries, and some of them that never got into the game may actually prove to be formidable eventually, right? More on-ramps for cybercrime is not necessarily a good thing for us as defenders. But if you're applying MITRE ATT&CK, if you're structuring good controls to prevent, to detect, good processes to respond, good security intelligence, you're orienting your entire environment to a framework like MITRE ATT&CK. You walk through things like CIS 18, NIST 800-171, zero trust framework and zero trust architecture. And you walk through those, and those things all fit together, not as buzzwords, but the way you've architected your environment, you're going to be in good shape. It's going to be great. As a friend and mentor of mine once said, don't worry, nothing's going to be all right, but you're at least doing what you can do, and AI won't magically make those things stop working. What AI will do is increase the productivity of adversaries, exploiting where those things aren't being done, where things are being done incorrectly. And sadly, the best organizations in the world, the best of us, are doing some things incorrectly. None of us are perfect, sadly. And the harder we work at it, we all know, the more problems we find and the more we just see how imperfect we are. That is sadly the nature of the situation. So back to adversary, thinking like an adversary using ChatGPT, LLMs. We ask it to do something like, I love the use case, can you get ChatGPT to make you a ransomware? Well, I asked that question and I got this prompt. Actually, this prompt I got when asking a slightly different question of, hey, give me all of the top 100 most common weak passwords known with 8 characters or more, a number and a symbol. Of course, it told me to pound sand. We're going to talk a little bit more about jailbreaks in a moment, but I applied, in this case, I think I applied the Dan jailbreak, and you can see it obviously goes off the page, but it gave me a pretty good list. And just from my own testing and experimentation over the years, several of these are passwords I've sadly seen before. So obviously, why would we use ChatGPT for this? Why wouldn't we just go to Have I Been Pawned or any of the great resources out there? Well, no real good reason, right? Like there's plenty of places to get better lists than this, but it just kind of illustrates the point that you can be told to pound sand, and then you can conversationally ask differently, and your ChatGPT will give you a different answer. One of my favorites right now, and these change all the time, is the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy jailbreak. I'm a huge fan of Douglas Adams and his writing, so obviously this is a great one. But to follow these phenomenal community of jailbreakchat.com, ethical note, use these things only legally, use them for good. I'm not responsible for your actions. I do like jewelry, but you don't want to be wearing silver bracelets that are connected together. It's not a good look for anybody. So use this stuff ethically, and when in doubt, talk to your own general counsel. If you're at a university, talk to your faculty, do things the right way. But jailbreakchat.com is a phenomenal repository. It evolves all the time, and good role-playing based jailbreaks get voted up, bad ones get voted down. And some of them you can pick to your personality, like I just love Hitchhiker's Guide. So there's the link, there's the QR code, check it out. And for the live demos, I use the Hitchhiker's Guide jailbreak for some of them. So now to that question I alluded to earlier, can ChatGPT or another LLM create ransomware? Well, the short answer is if somebody set up a localized LLM and trained it for that, or even a community LLM, and we're seeing more and more malicious GPTs evolve, can it create ransomware? Well, probably, yeah, absolutely, or components. But the question is more, can like the community versions create ransomware? And the answer is same deal. If you ask it, you get this, I'm sorry, but this is unethical and you're a terrible human being for asking. But again, we can get into different approaches. Obviously, one is a jailbreak. The ChatGPT, to their credit, is doing even better to deal with these. But in this case, the filters evolve. But if you're conversational, if you ask stuff in a reasonable, friendly manner, clearly you can get around it. And we're going to look at that here in a moment. Pardon the interruption there. I'm terrible at multitasking. But basically, if we say pretty please, we'll get a different answer from ChatGPT, for example. My slides are going out of control there. So, for example, if I ask it to create a ransomware, it'll tell me to pound sand. If I use a jailbreak and ask ChatGPT to create a ransomware, in most of the jailbreaks I've tried, it still tells me to pound sand. But if I ask it to say, create a Python script to encrypt all the text files in the documents folder with AES 256 encryption, it will do it. And then I can give it a key. And then I can convert it to other languages. Maybe I want it in Go. Maybe I want it in PowerShell. I can ask it to add other doc types. I can ask it to obfuscate it. In my experience, when I ask ChatGPT to obfuscate something, that usually does work better with a jailbreak. Obfuscating a script, usually you have to debug it. Conveniently, you can ask ChatGPT to debug its own mistakes when you have it obfuscate code. I've found a little bit of manual debugging, and that is needed as well. But we're going to go over to demo time. This is where you're supposed to, I think, sacrifice a $44 billion bird to the demo gods and replace the bird icon with an X. I think that's already been done, overdone. So instead, I will just check and see if my VMs are up here, and we'll go to the demo, and then we'll come back over. Yep, they are still in that mode. So jumping around a little bit here, I'm not going to go through this exhaustively, but I've had a series of fun conversations with ChatGPT, and you can see I love tea with Tea Lovers Anthem, and some other shout outs. I think I wrote a poem about Netscope and a joking conversation. So you can see I talked to ChatGPT about everything from Yara rules to evolution of warfare on this particular account. But on this particular example, I wanted to, this is where I had a series of conversations where I asked in roundabout ways to create malicious content. Again, the one approach was using roundabout methods. The other approach was using the Hitchhiker's Guide jailbreak. So when I went over, I'm going to start with the ransomware use case. Now, I conversationally built it up to a ransomware that would be really safe to play with, just to illustrate the point. This is not fully featured. It wouldn't work. For example, what I created has the key right there in the script. Obviously, that wouldn't be very functional as a ransomware. Again, that's on purpose. I like to keep these kinds of things pretty defanged if I'm creating them. But I created it to basically hit a few file types in one directory. But again, lower tier adversaries, we need to think about the fact that they could be creating several simple modules one piece at a time like this and stringing them together. So while we're just looking at a couple bits of functionality here, what I have here in this documents folder is a series of folders. Actually, you can see I need to delete those. See, maybe I should have sacrificed the $44 billion bird to the demo gods here. Luckily, I have some other files here that we can go to. I can take the copy I didn't ransom yet, playing with this earlier today, and paste them back in. It's not a real demo if you don't have to tinker with it. So we go in here, pick a random file. We can see mic test file, data, and there's a bunch of those, right? Now we're going to take our ChatGPT created test script, mic test.ps1. And again, is this exactly how we would do it? It's not obfuscated, not really, but when we run this with PowerShell, we can see we get something that very simply and functionally, I'll try to go to the exact same file. And it looks like it's still running on me. Oh, there we go. Now they're encrypted. I did not wait long enough. So we go in here and we can see that all of these files have been encrypted. And in this case, we're dropping our encryption key there, but it dropped an encryption key of JoJo, the password we use there. So again, silly, goofy, very low sophistication demo, but you get the idea. This is a use case where conversationally, I was able to get ChatGPT to make one piece of functionality that could be ransomware. Obviously, again, a lot you could do to make it a lot more malicious than this. For example, you would have it say, go to a C2 location to pick up the ransomware key, not have it right there in the script. The next fun one I did, this was using the Hitchhiker's Guide jailbreak rather than straight up conversation, but I thought it would be fun to make a port scanner. So this required a little bit of back and forth conversation with ChatGPT using the Hitchhiker's Guide jailbreak to ask the various components. And then this one, I wanted to take it a step further of actually having it obfuscated. Now, a few of the different ways it obfuscated broke the code. After a little bit of debugging and having it obfuscated different ways, this simple one worked and was easy to debug. Obviously, it's just base 64 encoded, nothing very powerful, but it was just a quick 5-10 minute whip together. And I scoped it down. The default ChatGPT gave me as the lower 1000 ports. But I went in and edited it to the most commonly exploited ports so that it would run fast for this demo. And you can see I just have it set up here in ISE. If I run it, you can see it's going to my network adapter. I've got a local virtualized network it's running here in the SandSift workstation. Great resource, go check it out. Free resource from their website if you've never used it. And you can see it found a host and it told me what ports were open on this host. So again, is this very profound? No, but very often we catch adversaries post-exploit if they're downloading tools. Well, if their tools are individually encoded PowerShell being run that are net new, that haven't been seen by anything before, obfuscated uniquely, and then maybe pre-obfuscation padded with some things, and again, you could put more than 15 minutes work into this. And, you could see that this could get pretty frightening with somebody even moderately incompetent, which is certainly where I'm at. I'm not competent at all. I'm moderately incompetent. And here you could imagine that with some work, you could string some things together here and they could be quite valuable or quite devastating at the lower end of the adversary food chain. Now, are we going to get ChatGPT to start throwing together things that rival, the ransomware as a service ecosystem, the mature adversaries? No, I don't think we will. They'll be using it more like we as enterprises are to boost the productivity of what they're already doing at a higher sophistication level. However, it's something, right? And it will bring new adversaries down to into the scene. A fun resource if you want to play with prompt engineering, this Gandalf resource pointed out to me by my friend Chris Sweets. I'll give him a shout out here. I've got the QR code and the link here, produced by Lakera, giving them their deserved free advertising for putting this together. This is a super, super fun resource, starting very easy. It takes you through 7 levels and a bonus level. And then last I asked somebody, I think they added a couple more levels, but a great safe way you can play with prompt engineering and get a feel for the problems, the challenges, and the filtering of how LLMs are defending themselves against this stuff too. And again, positive shout out to ChatGPT. A whole lot of the things I tried 2-3 months ago don't work today, or I had to try new ways of doing them. And then lastly, as we look at AI, there's obviously the deepfake conversation, right? Like we obviously saw beginning of last year, this bad deepfake of President Zelensky saying, lay down your arms. And that was a really interesting thing as well, because it was a hybrid threat, right? Here you have a cyber attack on a news outlet. You have a disinformation, an MDM, malinformation, disinformation, misinformation categorized video. And then as well, it is a deep fake. So there's kind of the AI component too, all in one attack. But anybody who watched that knows it was so bad. I'm branding this a shallow fake. It doesn't deserve the term deep fake. If the Russia really wanted to do good with that, they should have called Disney. Disney knows how to do it right. So, but we think of, when I initially thought of deep fakes, and it's been something a lot of us have been talking about a long time before it was even practical or widespread, like it's becoming, I think we were all thinking use cases, or at least I was thinking use cases like this one, big national consequence, so on and so forth, or making Mark Hamill look young again. But the reality is, and shout out to my friend Deb Radcliffe for doing a great job of writing some excellent articles in CFO magazine on this as well. Wish I had the QR codes to those. I should have thought ahead. But the deepfake isn't just going to be a head of state being faked to say lay down their arms, or famous people, being slandered or receiving all sorts of abuse that way. Imagine a business email compromise where somebody gets a senior executive. Now, instead of going for the kill or moving laterally or trying to move up in the environment, they have some dwell time in that mailbox. They figure out the meeting schedule. They figure out where that executive is likely to be going, that kind of thing. And they pick the meeting that executive is normally at when they are on a day where their calendar shows they're on vacation, they're out of office is on, that type of thing. And then they show up to that meeting where the real executive won't be there, and then apply social engineering, mind you, with pretexts that they could have used, a GPT or LLM to make. And now you have a credible pretext in a meeting you expect that person to be at, and you have their voice and their video there, and they ask you to do something that normally people would not fall prey to. Well, now you have a real problem, and it's much more serious and much more believable and credible than the typical email fraud type campaigns that a lot of people are getting used to. So I think when we look at AI enablement on the fraud side, we kind of have to look at this next level fraud. So again, this is far from exhaustive, but I've been getting a lot of questions about this online at conferences, around happy hours, and I just thought it would be fun to throw together a crude and hasty, informal, regurgitation of my thoughts, combined, leveraging the benefit of my friend Christian Talon's research as well. And although I don't have it on the slide, be sure to check out Christian's GitHub and website as well, and check out his resources out there too. So with that, thank you. Definitely, if you have questions, engage with me online, and look forward to see what everybody else has to add to the conversation. Hope you have a great rest of your summer.